Hello and welcome to this video for COMP3218 Game Design and Development at the University of Southampton. Today we're going to be looking at some more of the first courseworks. My name is Tom Blount, I am one of the lecturers on the course and I am joined here today by...
Hi, I'm Callum and I'm one of the demonstrators on the course.
Brilliant. Callum, could you tell us a little bit about what we asked the students to do for this coursework?
So there were two main things here. We asked them to make a game that had a very clear core dynamic that was well supported by all the mechanics. And then to create a tutorial that teaches the player those mechanics well.
Brilliant. Let's have a look at the first game. Okay, and this game is Cocktail Therapy. So no title screen to this one. I think we're thrown right into the mix, as it were. I guess so. We've got an arrow here pointing to this recipes button. I'm going to click it. Okay, we have some ingredients. I don't know if these are recipes or maybe I can click on these. No. Okay. Aha. But now I can click on this and this, I guess. So if I click on this. Okay. And then this one. Did that make a recipe? Yes, those two make a... Although I can't tell what's in it. Can add ice as well, I guess, and lemon. I don't think that's actually improved the drink, but we'll see. And I can drink it.
Ice and lemon always improves the drink.
Okay, I've got to make 2 more drinks. Things are starting to go a little bit wobbly, and I've got this meter that's going up towards blackout, which I assume is bad. So, okay, let's make the same drink again. A little bit of the way. Let's try and make the complicated drink, I guess. So that's a red thing, a purple thing. Red thing, purple thing.
I'm guessing cranberry juice and...
Lemon, red and ice. Lemon, red, ice. Drink. So that got us more points. I guess the first one was 75 and that one was 300 points. Aha, now we can spend those points. Okay.
Yes.
I can phone a friend. Phoning a friend after 3 cocktails doesn't necessarily seem like a great idea.
It's only 3 cocktails, though.
Let's do that. Okay, I have a phone a friend. Does that mean if I black out, they'll pick me up and I can keep drinking? Ah, the drinks have gone more complicated, so that's just... If I try and make that really simple drink, that only gives me 50 points this time, but it still counts as a drink. Ooh, okay, things are getting wobbly again. Okay, I'll try and make this complicated drink. You start telling me about the mark scheme. So let's start with looking at the overall quality.
So the first part of the quality is presentation. So that's information design, graphics, audio. So we've definitely got some very nice music that seems to fit the theme pretty well. Is there any sound effects? I can't...
I think there are a little. So when I put something in the cocktail shaker, I think there's a little bloop. Let's try it again and see. I can't actually tell. I feel like there was, but...
I'm not sure if you got that in.
Yeah. I don't know, I can drink it, so I assume I did. But yeah, so... Oh yeah, there is.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. You don't sort of mouse over and let go. You hold it over to pour.
Oh.
Or it seems to be because there's a sound effect if I can keep it over that. Okay, so that's something that I didn't get from the tutorial.
I guess that makes sense.
Okay, so this doesn't actually have a lot of booze in it. It turns out. All right, let's fill this one up. So there's no real indication of how full this thing is, or like the different measures that are supposed to go into it. And that one just apparently put me right under the table again. So I don't know what
you put too much in there. Clearly.
I mean, clearly, but
too long.
I don't know how much I'm supposed to put in there. Let's just fill these ones totally up. Okay, so aesthetics. So yes, there are sound effects. There is some lovely background music. The graphics are nice. They're consistent. It's very obvious what the different, the different bottles are different, even if I don't know exactly what they all are. Ooh, okay, this one made me a lot wobblier and is 100 points, so I think the more I pour into it...
Disconcerting.
Ooh, that's, yeah. A lot harder to pour now. So I guess I get more points the more I pour in. But it also makes everything more wibbly. Okay, so given that I have to make a certain number of drinks, I don't know why I don't just put like a thimble full of something in this, and that counts.
I assume that you get more points for making more complicated drinks, or more alcoholic drinks.
But there's no sort of direction as to how much of each I should have, so... Ooh.
Oh no, that is... I think you might black out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, not necessarily hugely forgiving as a tutorial level. So there we go.
No.
So just a tiny bit of each one gives me 100 points, and like no blackout, and still counts. Oh, and the points for these have they changed? No.
No, they're the same.
So I don't know what the phone a friend did, so let's go for improved tolerance instead.
So there's we've definitely got audio effects and music. I think there's, as far as I can tell, there's only the one sound effect of the pouring.
Yeah, but it's a little bit of feedback.
That's quite useful.
Obviously, that information design could be improved by, I don't know, maybe having a meter on the side of the glass, or like, a sort of a cutaway section of it, if you like, so we can see how full it is. Because I had no idea that I had to hold over to pour there. But that sound effect did eventually clue me in on that, so that works quite nicely. So, yeah, overall, where do you think we're looking at on the mark scheme for this?
So I think if we start at good, that's complementary audio effects and music, and I think they do complement each other quite well, and the game as a whole. Yeah,
and not to mention the wibbly wobbly effect is part of the aesthetic and the graphics, and that definitely, I would almost say that's sort of pushing up towards thematically resonant in terms of.
Ooh. That's a good point. And I would say the graphics are very simple, obviously, but I would say that they definitely kind of, I think they fit. I would say they're appealing. I think the sound effects and audio are also reasonably appealing.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that would put both of those solidly in the excellent. With then the potential for the thematically resonant wobbly effect.
Yeah, I would be inclined to say that the graphics are maybe partway towards that. Obviously, there's a little bit more they could do with some of the other things, and the audio I don't think is quite there. You could have like more clinking of glasses, sort of background chatter. Like, I don't know, almost little dialogue barks as you get more and more drunk kind of thing. But the wobbly effect of the graphics, like, is relatively difficult to do, and it definitely ties really nicely into the theme of their game. So.
Okay. So we've touched on information design already, regarding the not knowing how full the mixer is, for instance. So I think from that, at least from that specific point, we can safely say that like not all of the important information is shown.
Yes.
Because the contents of the mixer is kind of like the core thing, really.
Yeah, also, how many points each of these different recipes are worth, whether I'm supposed to put different amounts of each thing in. I don't know if I am. I think I can get away with putting the minimum amount of each one in, which is an interesting sort of set of mechanics, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, so information design, let's start with good and see where we go out from there.
So good would be all key information is shown. So unfortunately, I don't think they've managed that.
Okay, so what would a satisfactory be in that case?
So satisfactory is most key information is shown. And so we've got the blackout meter of how drunk you currently are.
Yep, that's true. We've got our current amount of points.
How much you have to do to progress to the next level, how many points you have. You've got the list of recipes and like all of the ingredients are very distinct. It's really obvious what they are.
Yes.
So other than the kind of indicator of what's in the drink and how badly this drink is going to affect you, pretty much everything else is, I think, reasonably clear.
Yeah, so I think we actually put it between the two there then, because it's verging on a good. There's like, it's one of these things where I'm not sure if it's a design choice or an oversight in the information design that they haven't included, like how much is in this, for example.
I suppose, yeah, you could argue you could definitely make that as a conscious design choice as a kind of challenge side of things. You have to keep track of it yourself. Okay, so if we put it between the two.
Right, which brings us next on to
meaningful play.
Meaningful play. So this is a tricky one because of kind of what I was saying, that slight confusion in, I guess, the goal, which again we'll cover momentarily. So I can tell that I have to make drinks, but I don't know. I guess it goes back to that information design. I don't know whether I should be doing most of the whether I should be trying to do one of each of these things, whether I should be putting in different amounts, what those different amounts are affecting. They definitely have different point values, but I'm not sure how the points relate to the blackout. Should I make two really, really tiny drinks and then one massive drink that will bring me sort of just up to here to get me the most points? So it feels like there is the scope for meaningful play, but because of maybe that lack of information design, I don't know how to engage with it.
And I think we'll get to this again. We'll get to this a little bit later with the goals and core dynamic stuff, but I think there might potentially be sort of a sort of friction between the fact that we're given points which seem to be bigger drinks, more complex drinks give you more points, but also you're very clearly told don't drink too much because you'll black out and lose. And you need to make this many drinks to pass the level. So we'll see but I think there might potentially be a little bit of friction there between those two.
Okay, so what? Again, let's start with a good for meaningful play and see what that says, and then we can sort of decide where we are from there.
So actually, none of that is in the meaningful play category. This is all about the mechanics, controls, and bugs.
Okay, so in terms of controls, I think the controls are pretty good. There are points where they are deliberately awkward, but I think that actually ties in nicely to the control scheme being quite good. Like the fact that as you get more drunk, stuff starts to swing and sway around more. It's difficult to control, but that's by design, and I quite like that.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to think of an example of an existing example of that, but totally blanked on that. But yeah, I think that's definitely the case. In terms of the mechanics, they definitely seem consistent. Add different drinks. You've got recipes so that if you add combinations of drinks, you get more points. You can drink. I'm not sure it's
again, it feels.
I'm not sure you could call it like a wide set of mechanics, though.
And that's the thing. It feels like there'd be very easily scope for that. So sort of having being forced to put in different amounts of the things, like the different types of things having a different effect on either the points or the blackout or even just the screen wibbliness.
Yeah, I've even seen again this particular idea may not fit the dynamic of this game in particular, but I have seen in a sort of related recipe-based game that you get, you get bonus points if you don't check the recipe while you're doing it. Which again, just like little additions like that can add a bit of complexity or depth to your approach. So that's interesting. They track your total points.
I think my total points was a lot higher than this though. So I've got 150 points for this level and 850 points now. If I sober up, I go down to 0 points. I'm perfectly fine, and then I can. Let me just quickly again, not sure if bug or because my total points have gone down. I couldn't afford it in this level, so it's subtracted from my total points. It feels like buying the power-ups shouldn't affect the total points. I just shouldn't be able to buy the power-up if I don't have the points currently. I think that might be a bug.
I mean, what do you think? You were on 800 and you...
I spent 150 that I currently had, and 150 that I didn't have. I think this is...
you on 800 or 850?
850.
Oh, okay, so that, if you sobered up and then gained 150 points, that is actually the correct value of points, but that's not.
Well, it is, because it's taken 150 from this and the 150 I previously had.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm bad at maths.
Oh, and also, hang on, so buying a power-up doesn't put me to the next level. I've been on level 2 this whole time. I have to click a different button to go to level 2. Oh, no, I'm still on level 2.
There may only be 2 levels.
Interesting. Okay. Anyway, I'm getting distracted from the mechanics that we were talking about.
So, I don't think we could say this is a wide set of mechanics, but I think they are definitely complementary mechanics.
Absolutely, yeah. I fully agree with that.
And as you said, the controls are smooth. I think it's... I don't know if it would count as intuitive, because while you have worked it out without ever being explicitly told the controls, there are things like, for instance, not being certain whether you need to hold the drinks over the mixer or just drop them in. So we're still not certain about.
I would say that either of them would be sort of intuitive, and it's more about how it's tutorialized. I think that's possibly a failure of the tutorial rather than...
That's fair. So if we're happy to say that there are smooth and intuitive controls, then that would bring us on to bugs. And
so I'm going to call the points thing, a bit of a minor bug, but otherwise it seems to be working okay.
So, to be fair though, the kind of the change in the total points is consistent and does actually follow what you would expect from, or what should happen from the points. So
I would disagree. I would say if I have 150 points, I shouldn't be able to spend 300 points.
But it's coming from your total points, so I think it's reasonable to assume they've just decided you spend, like, the points earned is just how much you've added to it in this level, and you spend from your total point balance to, like, get your power-ups.
Okay, perhaps. Alright, in which case, then it's a game with a reasonable amount of complexity and very few bugs. So whereabouts does that put us?
I'm sorry.
Frantic shuffling of papers in the background.
So if there are infrequent minor bugs, then that would put it at a good. I suppose we then have the thing of you can press next level when you get to level 2, and you remain on level 2 indefinitely.
Yeah, so again, I'm not sure if that's... I don't know if that's a bug or if there just aren't that many levels, but if there aren't that many levels, it would have been nicer to have a, just a simple you win screen, or even just continually increment the level counter. There's no harm in that, necessarily.
Yeah. So, I think... And based on some content of their games notes that we'll get onto later, I think it is fair to say that probably should count as a bug.
Okay, but again, sort of not necessarily game-breaking, but... Okay.
But yeah, infrequent minor bugs. So, the next section is the brief. So here we've got level design, goals, risks and rewards, pacing, and the tutorial. And we've kind of mentioned this already. There doesn't seem to be much attempt at teaching the player how things works.
That's not entirely fair. There is an attempt. They indicate you to have a look at the recipes, and they indicate you that, like, the top recipe has the blue and the, I think, apple juice or whatever it is, and they're the only two things on it. So there is an attempt.
Okay, I'd forgotten that.
Doesn't necessarily fully explain. In fact, I tell you what, I'm gonna make myself black out so we can go and have another look at it. It didn't fully explain the controls, and it doesn't fully explain the mechanics. So that the more I don't have to put all of this in, and the more of it I do, I guess possibly it's not even the more points I get, for example. So I get more points, I guess, for following the recipes, but each recipe only has to have a tiny amount of the thing in. And now I'm struggling to click on stuff. Ooh, I had it for a second.
And I do remember, when we were talking to them in the labs, and they were saying, like, yeah, we want it to be the case that as you get more drunk, it becomes physically harder to play the game because you're not in control so much. And it's an interesting idea to have a game that just becomes harder to play as you progress. Like, not in terms of all the difficulties increase, like the controls are less effective.
I mean, that is one way of changing the difficulty.
Yeah.
But anyway, speaking of tutorials, let me see if I can...
Yes.
There we go.
Hey.
Ooh. And after all that, it's... Oh, no, there we go. Arrow to the recipes, we click on that, we get the set of recipes. It doesn't tell us what these things are, we haven't seen any of these things yet. It maybe would have been nice if for the very first recipe it only has these two things, because these are the two things that are currently on the screen. They hide everything else, which is nice, it stops that being overwhelming. And then as soon as we use this, the rest of the alcohol appears, and when we use this, the rest of the mixes appear. That's kind of nice. So it's semi-integrated, I would say.
Yeah, it's not quite as smooth as it could be, but that is definitely like a good starting point for how to teach what's going on. I think, that side of things is quite good. Unfortunately, they then don't really explain how the rest of stuff work. Like, we're still not fully certain how the points work or what some of the power-ups do.
I still don't know what that phone a friend does.
So they've definitely got, there's some decent tutorial elements there. I mean, it might just be that, if you black out,
it didn't,
you get rescued by your friend. Oh, did it? It didn't.
No, I just blacked out.
Interesting. So we've got here for the tutorial. If we start with satisfactory, so that's a gradual explanation of gameplay and controls somewhat aligned with play. Actually, no, if we jump up to good, that's a gradual explanation of gameplay and controls fully aligned with play. And for the stuff they've taught, I think it's fair to say that it is fully aligned with the play.
It does gradually introduce
you through how to make a drink, and then as you do so, it introduces the extra stuff. The issue is that they just don't teach
enough of it.
Half of the mechanics.
Yeah, there is a gradual introduction of the concepts they teach, in that first they show you the recipes and then they show you pouring a drink. But that's it, is the thing. That said, it is integrated with the gameplay. There's they make you show that you can pour a drink before introducing all of the others, so that bit is good. So maybe between satisfactory and a good for this, do you think, or?
So the thing with this is that for part, if we read the marketing very literally, we don't get any mention of only partially explaining things until you get down to pour, which is some explanation of gameplay and controls. I don't think it should be that anywhere near that low, because what they have taught, they've taught pretty well. But the issue is that because they haven't taught quite a few of the important mechanics, I think it should probably pull that quite a lot down from a good, potentially even as low as a pass.
Okay, so what would a pass be?
So pass is gradual explanation of gameplay and controls revealed as you play.
And what was the difference between that and a satisfactory?
Whether or not it's fully aligned with play or partially aligned with play.
I think it is aligned with play, so I think maybe either between a pass and a satisfactory there. Yeah, probably between a pass and a satisfactory thing.
I'm happy with that. Okay, so the other two things there are the pacing and your kind of goals, risks, and rewards.
So this is tricky, because again, the goals aren't clear other than make 2 drinks, but we don't know which drinks we should make, we don't know how we should make them. The risks and rewards are, again, a little unclear. The risk is at least very clear. The more alcohol we put in a drink, the closer we are to blacking out. Fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a reward associated with putting more alcohol in it. Do we get more points for it, or is it just for doing...
If you just stick one of every alcohol
I
in
was
the drink,
just
see what
thinking that, yeah.
happens.
If I can...
It might cause you to black out, so we may not find out. But yeah, there's definitely risks, and I think, like, based on the point system that we've seen that some drinks change the number of points you have. I think there is rewards in there. It's just we're not sure what they are.
So that only gave me 50 points. So even putting one of most of the alcohols. So I guess it is based on the recipes.
So we're not clear. We're not clear what the goals are or what the rewards are, but they do seem to be there. So if we look at satisfactory, that's a coherent set of goals, risks, and rewards, and it's hard to say because we don't know what they are.
They're not clear, are they?
Yeah. So if we look at the ones either side of that, for good, it's a clear and coherent set of goals, risks, and rewards. Whereas for a pass, it's a limited set of goals, risks, and rewards. So it's definitely not reached good because it's not clear. But I'm
trying to work out at the minute if, so for example, this first recipe only has one alcoholic thing in, the others have more. So this is worth more points than a non-recipe one, but maybe not as much as the ones that will get you more drunk.
Another question is, does the order you put the drinks in have an effect?
Yeah.
Not the drinks, rather the ingredients, because that...
So I was 250 for that one.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, it might not reach good. Probably reaches satisfactory. There is definitely like this... Like, there is seemingly some balance between, like you say, the risks and rewards.
Yeah, so then the question there is the difference between that. Is it a limited set or is it a coherent set? It's very hard to tell from here.
Possibly between the two. So
I think a place to put it, given we're not sure.
So let me... You know what, I'll tell... So this gave me, I think, 250 points. This one, I think, gave me 300 points. I think that means there is a risk in that, do I want to get more drunk to get more points? So the amount of these that goes in doesn't matter, but the fact that this has more alcohol by recipe means that it's worth more points. Which means I will say that there's risks and rewards, because now I have to... And there's also the risk and reward of which... let me just quickly drink that. Which power-up do I buy? Do I want the sober-up, or do I want to... So actually, yeah, there's not a limited set. There are a number of different choices we can make that have different risks and rewards.
So we've got a coherent set.
Don't know what this does yet.
Satisfactory. So then we've got tension.
I would almost bump it up a little bit, given that there's also the power-ups. Like, the power-ups are clear, at least.
The thing is, the difference between satisfactory and good is whether it's clear. And
the power-ups are clear. This is not.
A good 25 minutes to work out what the risks and rewards are. So I'm not sure that it's actually clear.
Again, I say that the power-ups, there is a clear risk and reward. Do I want the greater tolerance for the future, or do I want the resetting my blackout meter now? That at least is clear.
Put it between the two?
Put it between the two. Right. Pacing.
I would say the tension clearly rises over time. You get close to blacking out and it's much harder to play.
That is true. Whether the actual designed levels increase, because I don't think these recipes have changed, right? These are the same as before.
They have changed from the first level.
They've changed from the first level, so I guess there's just 2 levels is the thing, and this one repeats.
Yeah.
So, been maybe nicer to see a sort of smoother progression from a 2-ingredient drink to how many have we got here? Like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with... This one actually has less alcohol than this one.
I mean...
Let's see if I can make it.
So, if we... If it rises over time, that would put it in satisfactory.
Definitely does that.
for good, it would be that the tension rises over time in a coherent pattern. And I'm not sure that it's managed that. And partly because it's so short that it's...
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's such a tiny amount of time to look at it over.
There we go. Yeah, if they'd just sort of had like a few more levels with set different recipes that increasing, like in terms of the mechanical difficulty, yeah, that clearly rises in a coherent pattern because it's tied to this and it's tied to how many things I put in. But the actual sort of design of the recipes, like you say, there's effectively 2 steps, so we can't see the pattern that's emerging.
Yeah. So satisfactory on the pacing. So that brings us to the core dynamic. So, what do we think the core dynamic is?
I would say it is survival. Because...
They would also say that.
And you sound like you would disagree.
I think at its core it's probably closest to survival, but I'm not... Okay, it's not so much that I don't think it's survival, but I think there are some design choices that work against it a bit.
So yeah, and again this goes back to the... so for example, clearly survival because we have a meter that's constantly encroaching the more we play, and the way we play determines, how fast or quickly we lose, and our goal is, I want to survive a little bit longer than last time, I want to get a few more points than I did the last time. Clearly survival. Whether all of the mechanics fully support it, I don't know. So for example, again, the thing that we've sort of talked about a number of times, the amount of alcohol we put in dramatically affects our survivability, but not necessarily, it doesn't actually help us in any way, so we have no incentive to sort of do that.
Although we have found that as long as you stick to the recipes, you do get more points.
But equally, I can just...
Points do mean prizes.
But I can just put in like 3 thimbles of this blue stuff. Okay, the yellow stuff.
How much does it cost to... So yeah, the sober up and improved tolerance. What does improved tolerance... How much of an effect does it have?
Difficult to tell. I would assume it just makes the bar go up slightly slower, but I don't really know. But so what I can...
Wait, you only had 150 points there, didn't you?
Yeah, and as we've already spoken about, it comes out of the total points for some reason.
Oh, right, yeah, I'd forgotten you had quite a high total points.
So actually, to be fair, in theory, doing this is a loss, because I'll get 150 points each level I do that, and then lose 150 each level.
So yeah, my initial feeling was that giving points for making bigger, like doing more intense drinks, was kind of encouraging people to maximize points over surviving for a long time. But if the point of the points is to get those power-ups that let you last longer, then actually I think it does kind of work towards that survival, because then you have the trade-off.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, actually, I take it back. I don't think there's much that is working against it. So if we jump in at a good, we have a clear core dynamic that is supported by the primary mechanics, which I think they've done.
Yeah, I think so. So let's say what would be an excellent for sake of argument.
So excellent would be a clear core dynamic that is supported by an integrated set of mechanics.
And this I think highlights what we were talking about earlier. It doesn't quite meet that.
Yeah, I think like there is a set of mechanics and they do work well together. Like, the points, like managing how risky you want to be to get points to get power-ups is like a separate thing to the core mechanic, to the primary mechanic. But it's not like a fully integrated set, I don't think. So
the fact that the amount...
I'd say to put it between the two.
I would be inclined to say just a good, because the fact that the amount of alcohol you can pour into this thing is massively affects this, but isn't integrated into the rest of the systems.
That's true. I suppose you could argue that that could be, with the difficulty of like controlling the drink as time goes on, that could be part of it. That you don't want to accidentally pour loads in because that's just a mistake. But
the thing is, you're much more likely to accidentally put a tiny amount in than you are a lot. In fact, it's very, very hard to put a lot in because of the way it's moving.
It's true.
So I would
Okay,
be inclined to say
yeah.
it's a good for that.
All right, the last thing we have is feedback. So, so the first thing they have is that initially they were thinking that they'd planned this going with it being spatial reasoning, because it relies on dragging and dropping stuff around the screen.
Okay. I can see where they were coming from.
Yeah.
But there's space, but there's not necessarily the reasoning. It is all about.
So, yeah, I think at this point they still had the idea that the controls get harder over time, and you get this distortion effect that makes it difficult to keep track of things. But they say that they were told that there wasn't really a clear goal with that, and make like the effect of getting drunk was essentially to just, in some ways, took agency away from the player, and there was no way for them to kind of regain that.
Okay, so how do they think they addressed it, other than just saying, okay, it's a survival game?
So what they've said is that they changed it so that the goal was to make, was to get through the level by making the number of drinks required, while also trying to minimize the drunkenness. And they decided to add the power-ups at the cost of points as a way for the player to kind of control the difficulty and try and help them survive for longer.
Okay, that I think is good. Like, adding that as an additional mechanic that sort of has the consideration of, now it's a trade-off between like my score and how long I survive. I think that's actually a really good approach to it.
So yeah, that's the piece of feedback they have there.
Cool.
But it is quite a core one. So if we have a look at a good, we've got feedback has been addressed and the changes have been successful, and I think that's definitely the case.
Yes.
Because I think if they tried to stick with this being spatial reasoning, we'd have been much more critical about the core dynamic.
Absolutely. Okay, so what about above that? Do you think it was?
So excellent would be feedback has been interpreted and addressed, and the changes have been successful.
You know what? I think it probably meets that.
Yeah.
Like they haven't just said, okay, it's survival. They've actually added some, like they've thought about it, they've added some mechanics that really emphasize that actually no, it is survival. So I think we can say that that's excellent.
Yeah. Prizeworthy would then be that feedback has been interpreted and imaginatively addressed with successful changes. So the question there is, how imaginative do we think the changes are?
And I don't think it quite necessarily meets the prizeworthy. I think it's a good solution, but it's not a thoroughly novel and groundbreaking solution. But that's fine. That's still an excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and on that note, I think that's time to move on to the next game. Alright, and this game is Roof Runner. So, a really nice title screen, sort of thematic. There are definitely roofs there. I like that we actually have some control options. I'm going to change it and see if it works. Left shift seems a good one to go for. Let's start the tutorial. Okay. Got a countdown in the middle of the screen, got a timer ticking off. Try moving with WASD, get to the end.
So immediately, it looks like we've started looking in one direction when the tutorial messages and the map are kind of off to the side a bit.
Interesting. I sprinted for half of that, and I only got a silver medal, and they haven't taught me how to sprint yet. Let's try that again.
I suppose that's for the
for you are a returning player, yeah.
Runners, yeah.
Okay.
Which I think is fair.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. See, again, we've got that. You started facing away from the rest of the level, which is a reasonably minor point, but it's one of those kind of polished things where it'd be nice to, be presented with the direction you're going.
Not very good at jumping, it seems. One thing that I will say in terms of polish, their quick restart button also works in the middle of the. There we go.
That's
and
nice.
jump straight over it. Also works when I'm falling to my death. That's really, really useful. Almost a bit undermined by the fact that I then have to wait 3 seconds to start the level. I wonder if there's some sort of middle ground between the two there. Okay, nice little sound effects when we jump and when we're running though. Although no sort of background music for some. I don't think I'm just this bad at this. I think the jump is occasionally a bit sticky. Alright.
We're almost there.
Nope.
Ah, no. Yeah, it is one of those things where jumping controls can be very difficult to get right. Both in terms of like the feel of them, but also the function.
Almost pressed restart by mistake there.
That would have been very sad.
Okay, so we've got an indicator.
Ooh.
I stopped to try and read the text.
Well, that second bit of text there is very small.
Yeah.
Given where it enters the screen from.
Press R for a quick read. Oh, don't worry, I learned how to do that. Okay.
Okay, should we get
let's
started with the muck scheme? So the first part of this is presentation, information design, graphics, and audio. We know there's audio effects.
So there are audio effects, but no music, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that puts them at a pass. Because poor would be little and poorly chosen audio, and I don't think that's true. I think the sound effects are reasonably good. Oh, we can't read that text.
Hold left shift or double to sprint and jump further. Okay, good to know.
It would have been helpful to know after you achieved that.
That is a weird bit of information to make so small compared to like this, because that is telling you how to do this. So, but okay.
What do we think about the graphics so far?
I quite like it. Simple, but it's clear. Clear where I'm supposed to be going. There's this nice sort of what's it called? Map pin type indicator thing. The buildings are all nice. The sort of cloudy fog and this glowing effect sort of at the bottom when we reach all the way down here. Oh, they're actually flying. Huh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I'd assumed it was just you're in an endless void, don't worry about it. But
yeah,
the idea is that you're in some kind of floating city. That's pretty cool.
Nice little bit of polish there. Okay.
So yeah, I think.
Can I make my way back up?
The point of having consistent graphics. I think it's fair to say also they're pretty effective. You've got your focus very firmly on the stuff that is important.
Absolutely,
there's no clutter. It's not making it harder to tell what's going on. The question is, do we think the graphics are appealing?
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also say so. So that would put them in excellent. To go up to prizeworthy, they would need to be thematically resonant. And again, the issue that we have with a lot of these is that that's quite a tricky thing to achieve. And I mean, to be honest, I'm not certain how you would do that in here.
So,
but I think
I would already say it's actually approaching it because of what we were talking about, like the fact that there's not only an endless void, but for example, they've put a little thought into the graphics and sort of shown that these buildings are actually flying in an endless void, like a tiny detail like that again sort of builds towards the overall thing. So I think it's certainly approaching it.
That provides the justification for why you would be jumping rather than walking between buildings because there is no floor.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, maybe like halfway to prizeworthy.
Cool. Information design. So,
I think that tiny bit of text we had a couple levels ago it should probably count towards the tutorial stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than information design.
So the actual information design of the level, we have the timer in the top left. We have the big glowing map pin sort of showing our goal. These jump pads, which we've just discovered, very clearly a different type of building to the others, or at least a different what do you call it? Different platform.
Yeah.
Again, the information design of the audio, sort of giving you some feedback when you're jumping. Yeah, it's all pretty good.
I would say I hadn't noticed that there was a timer in the top left. I think that could be clearer, maybe like slightly larger and more central, so it's easy to keep track of. Because at the moment, you have to move your eyes quite a long way to check the timer during a run. So it might be nice to have that a bit more central. And you've got the gigantic map pin showing you the goal, which is nice. But the building itself, there's not that much to indicate. You've got this little grey circle, but it'd be nice if that was
a flag or something.
But those are both fairly minor quibbles. Like everything else is very nice.
Okay, and again,
so if we
sort of different type of platform with a different look and feel to indicate it is special.
So if we start at a good, we've got all key information is shown, and that's definitely the case.
Yes.
Excellent would be all key information is shown clearly, and I think despite those two minor things, I think it's probably there.
Yeah, I would say the timer is shown to the degree that it needs to be. It's only super important once you actually you don't need to check the timer as you're playing. When it shows up at the end saying.
Yeah, I suppose that where you are on the timer isn't actually going to affect you during the level. It's not like you're going to change the way you're playing because the timer is at a different value.
So yeah, I think it probably does hit the excellent there. What would it
praiseworthy
need to be for praiseworthy?
Would require novel ways of showing key information. And I don't know about that.
So yeah, I don't think it quite reaches that. I think they've used a lot of well-established things like big floating goal markers, sort of different look and feels for platforms and things like that. Just having the timer be nice and visible. But yeah, I think it definitely hits the excellent. So next we'll be looking at the mechanics and the gameplay.
Yes, so mechanics, controls, and bugs. So in terms of mechanics, we've got running and jumping, we've got sprinting, there's bounce pads, there's moving platforms, there's wall running. There's quite a lot so far.
Yeah, there is a nice set of mechanics. So yeah. As you say, a lot of different types of platforms, a number of different ways to move about. So I can also do this.
Oh, we've also got these platforms that break.
Yep.
So I think that's definitely a wide set of complementary mechanics.
I fully agreed, yes.
I'm not certain that these braking platforms are that useful for them. Obviously, this is the first time it's introduced, so maybe in future levels we'll see them included in an interesting way.
I mean, they've already posed a challenge for me. Like, there's a number of times I've landed on one of these and then fallen before I've had a chance to jump off. So I think they're a good mechanic for this. They also, probably talk about this more in the core dynamic, I think they enhance the sort of theme of that as well, because you're pressured to keep moving forwards and keep moving fast.
That's fair. So we've got a wide set of complementary mechanics. So that's excellent, sorry. Prizeworthy would be a wide set of complex and complementary mechanics.
And again, this is where I don't necessarily think the mechanics they've got at the minute build together in such a way that they're overly complex. I think what they have is good.
Yeah. I think each individual mechanic I definitely don't think counts as complex. I think you could definitely build them together in a way that could create really interesting complex play. We haven't seen that yet, though.
Perhaps this is something we'll see later, so I think for now we'll put it down to excellent, and then perhaps we'll revisit that if, depending on how some of these are combined.
Okay, so controls. How are you finding the controls?
The movement, fine. The jump is, for some reason, to me it feels a little bit sticky, and it might... So there, for example, I feel like I was... I think it's because I start falling slightly before I think I do, and maybe that's to do with where the... what do we call it? The collider for the main player is. So first-person platforming, particularly in 3D, this is one of the problems with it. Sometimes games will, for example, extend the colliders of the platforms a little beyond the actual graphical bounds to give the player that little bit of extra... I can't think of the word, a little bit of extra, say, security in how they're playing, a little bit of a handicap. So
I suppose the other thing is it appears that your character model is like one of the capsules. So it's possible that if you've got like a kind of rounded collider, the center of the collider is just over the edge.
That could very well be it, yeah.
So I think if we start with a satisfactory, we've got a reasonable set of usable controls. And it seems to be the case. Like you're getting through the levels. It's a bit of a challenge, but this is quite interesting. So this looks like we might start to see some complex gameplay now.
Or at the very least, this is a good example of their goals, risks, and rewards. I remember I was talking about this in the expo. But yes, what would a good be in terms of?
So a good would be a reasonable set of smooth, usable controls. And I think because of that issue with the jumping, which is kind of the central thing, I think because you're finding that jump a little bit sticky, I'm not sure that we can count it as a smooth set of controls.
I think it's possibly halfway between the two, because when I can get it to work, or rather when it works as I'm expecting it to, it feels fine. It feels pretty good. It's just, occasionally, I don't know what it is, whether it doesn't quite register or, like you say, because of the shape of the collider, I'm actually off the side of the building more than I think I am. But
yeah, I have a feeling that would be very easy to fix in like an updated version. But I'm happy to say it's kind of halfway there because, if you think that if you've said that when it works, it's very nice to use, then yeah, let's put it halfway. Bugs. Have we found any bugs?
Have not noticed any bugs. I would say the game is reasonably complex. We've got a number of different types of platform.
So that would put it solidly in excellent, reasonably complex, and no obvious bugs. Prizeworthy would be if the game is of higher complexity. And do we think it's reached that?
Not quite at this stage. So
that was interesting.
I was trying to sort of jump my way up the tower. It didn't quite work. I think we say this is a solid excellent.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the next section is to do with the brief. So this is about how well it's been tutorialized, what the goals, risks, and rewards are, and how the pacing is. So you just mentioned the risks and rewards. The goal, very clear. There is literally a giant marker over the goal on every level.
Not to mention, there's a clock. We get medals for doing it faster.
Yep. There is definitely goals. There's definitely rewards. It seems like we've just about started to reach the point where they're having different kind of risk-reward options. Because it looks like this level's got alternate paths that definitely seem to vary in difficulty. Although it's hard to tell whether or not you get bonuses for that.
So that's the thing. I would say it's very difficult at a glance to tell which of these routes is the easy one and which is the fast one. Because, ideally that's how you want to do it. You want to have one that's easy to complete but perhaps longer or slower, and one that's riskier but will get you there faster. I cannot tell at a glance from which of these is. If I squint, I can see that the text up there says, "Wall run up here if you dare," so I'm assuming that's the harder path.
I think I agree with you. It's definitely hard to tell from here. I would argue that might not be a bad thing. Given the style of game, you could definitely make the argument that it seems to be targeted towards a specific kind of play, like that kind of speed running approach to things. In which case, you could argue that having the risks and rewards being a little bit hidden, where part of the fun is trying to work out which parts are fastest. Let's redo the levels over and over until we find the most efficient way to do this. Potentially is part of the fun.
See, this is interesting, and I see where you're coming from. I personally would disagree, given that the goal is to sort of move through the level as fast and fluidly as possible. You want to be able to see sort of at a glance which one should I take. I'm not saying this is inherently a bad level. I'm just saying that would be. So okay, I guess before we start splitting hairs, let's consult the mark scheme. What would a good be?
A good would be clear and coherent set of goals, risks, and rewards. And the goals are definitely clear. The question is, are the risks and rewards? I think at this point, in the level, you can kind of see that this path is going to be a bit slower on account of like the moving platforms, and you have to go kind of further out the way.
Yeah, agreed. I think we're definitely
not for certain, but it might be.
I think we're definitely at least at a good in terms of a.
Yeah.
If nothing else, just the fact that there's gold, silver, and bronze medal, and I can try and make riskier jumps than to try and get that gold. For me, every jump is a bit of a risky jump, though.
So an excellent would be clear, coherent, and well-balanced set of goals, risks, and rewards. And this is the point where potentially this minor issue with the controls is making it hard for us to tell, because it's hard to gauge how well balanced they are, because we can't. We're not currently capable of going down all of the paths.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. I think.
So I think it definitely meets the good. I think it's that sort of. It is clear that there is a risk and reward between these two paths. The fact that we can't tell which of them is supposed to be the easy one means that they're not necessarily super well balanced. I mean, I'm sure that the devs are screaming at me as they watch this and saying they could complete this blindfolded, but that is one of the perils of designing and playtesting your game. You get really good at it.
I'll be interested to see if they did do any playtesting. Maybe it is just that we're really bad at this. Oh, exciting. This seems like an extreme risk.
See, you were saying the other one is the slower route because it has moving platforms, but so does this one.
Yeah.
I think we say firmly in a good.
Yep. So in terms of pacing, the tension has definitely risen.
Absolutely.
This is a lot more complicated than it was before. So that is definitely a satisfactory. A good would be if it's rising in a coherent pattern. I've not been following the levels too closely, but I think it seems to be like a reasonably coherent pattern.
I would say so.
It feels like this level was quite a significant jump from the previous one.
I would agree with that.
No pun intended.
But that doesn't mean it's not a coherent pattern. It just means that it's gone to the bit where my skills are being, let's say, tested.
Because also this is, I think, the first level where they're not really introducing anything new. They're just saying, here's all the stuff. Be fast.
Yeah.
So that's excellent. Prizeworthy would be no, sorry, I'm wrong. That was good. Excellent would be tension rises over time in a coherent and well balanced pattern, and I think that might be the issue here, because
of the sort
this has taken so much longer to get through than any of the previous levels.
Yeah. And again, that's maybe down to just sort of like a little bit of tweaking and refining of the controls, because the actual level I don't.
But then, when you're designing your levels, it's important to take how usable your controls are into account, and the mechanical ability of players to get through it.
No, I want to live. Not like this. Okay, so yeah, I think we put it there at the good.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Cool. So, tutorial. I think this tutorial's been very good. Other than that...
Oh, there's a skip to next level. That's handy. I will try that next time. So yeah, I'll come back to the beginning so we can look at the tutorial. Initial tutorial, moving the controls, just walking to the end of the level, making sure we've understood that. Yeah, seems pretty good. Oh, interesting.
What?
I just noticed there's those jump pads on those buildings over there.
Huh.
I had totally not noticed that before. Huh.
No. Yeah, I think there's this little... Ooh.
Yes?
So I was going to say there's a little bit of an issue where I don't like the fact that the camera doesn't start facing the way you need to be going. But you could argue that that's to
teach you how to
make
move
sure
the camera,
that you know how to move the camera. I'm not sure about that, especially given it does it for a few levels in a row. But I don't know. I might be tempted to give them the benefit of the doubt with that. It's a very minor point either way. So
yeah, I think it's one worth considering though.
I think this level though is really the biggest problem they have.
Yeah, agreed.
where the text explaining how to do it is really only possible to read after you've finished and it's backwards.
Like, that message really should be like here, like sprint to jump, because then we're going to try, or rather shift or whatever it is to sprint, and then we will go, oh, a nice long bit of thing, we can sprint here.
Like,
and then,
if they wanted to do it where, they don't tell you and then you fall so that you're forced to learn, oh, here's how to do the quick restart if you mess up, and then after you've done the restart, you put the message up on this side saying, hey, this is how you sprint, that would have been very nice.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. So I think...
But as it
didn't reset the controls, so
it's W now, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is interesting, actually. I don't know why they didn't just make it both rather than one or the other.
But then, once we get past this, we've got all of the movement controls established, and then they go through and they introduce the mechanics, broadly speaking, one at a time. They very briefly combine a couple of them and then introduce a new one. I think, other than that one level, the tutorial here is very well structured.
Agreed, yeah.
So if we start at a good, gradual explanation of gameplay and controls fully aligned with play, I think they're definitely there.
Yes.
An excellent would be gradual explanation of gameplay and controls fully aligned with play and sometimes communicated through level design.
I would say definitely there as well. So it's not solely communicated through level design. Obviously there's these bits of text to sort of nudge the player in the direction, but they ensure that the concepts are demonstrated through the level design.
Yeah.
There's also that the bit with the risk and reward. That's never necessarily explained that there are quicker paths. It's just sort of present in the level design. You can use one path to get the gold.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're probably there for that.
I think they're definitely that excellent. But yeah, there are some ways you could maybe incorporate the level design a bit. So if we look at quite a similar game, if we look at Mirror's Edge, where they then have there are certain elements of the level that are coloured very you've got the red elements that are designed to like really high contrast. This highlights important things. And there are parts of the, they don't explain parts of the game. They just like, okay, here's a red pipe. What happens if you jump on it? Well,
so
now you learn how to walk across pipes.
This is the perfect example of that. Like, there's only one other roof that we can jump to with a weird glowing green thing on it. They don't have to tell us some buildings have a special effect. Like, just like the audio of us landing on that and getting thrown into the air demonstrates that. So, yeah, okay, perhaps not fully at the excellent because of, like you say,
well, excellent is sometimes communicated through level design. So I think it's definitely sometimes there.
Ah, okay, that is true.
Prizeworthy is if it's just fully communicated or largely communicated.
So again, bits like this where it says some platforms don't stay in one place. Like, yeah, I can see that. And then there's yet more text down there that says they're moving. It's like, yep, again, I can see it. So maybe a little bit overkill on some of the text, but equally, I do like that it's like actually integrated into the world and floating over the platform. So that's kind of a nice touch.
I'm not sure what the sticky remark is about.
I think, and I'm not 100% sure on this slightly blurred edge sticks me to it somewhat.
Maybe.
So
I guess if they found that people were sliding off the platforms, that might be how to
like the
prevent
momentum.
That. Yeah. Okay, so the next part is I've absolutely biffed it and put that in the wrong column. The next part is the core dynamic. So, what do we think the core dynamic is?
Oh, that was the final level. I would say it is race to the end.
I would absolutely agree with you, and so do they.
Good.
So that's a good start.
Okay, so again, let's dive straight into the mark scheme and let's start by looking at good. I think we can clearly say that, they've got the right core dynamic.
And good would be that it is supported by the primary mechanics, which absolutely.
Yep, fully supported by it, I would say.
Yeah. Excellent is supported by an integrated set of mechanics, and again, I think they've definitely got that. They all work together really well, and I don't think.
So it's interesting.
Potentially, I would argue that maybe the moving platforms work against it a little bit because they often force you to kind of stop and like wait and time things a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say.
if you're using them as one of those risk reward things where like, yeah, the safer path is a bit slower because they haven't used them that way, but you could potentially. So
I would agree. So it's interesting because you could have made the case that this was going to be a spatial reasoning game because it's all about, progressing through the space. Most of the mechanics are about, like the jump platforms, the braking platforms, they're all about moving through the space. However, because they've got the timer, because they've got the medal system that rewards you for progressing through the space faster, absolute race at the end. And I think the fact that they reward you differently based on the speed at which you do it is the thing that really defines it.
Yeah, and I think that's fair to say. So that would put them in an excellent. Prizeworthy would be having a clear core dynamic that is supported by an integrated set of mechanics and other supporting dynamics. And I don't know that they're there. I suppose you could argue that, as you said, there's that spatial reasoning element, but I don't know that I would go so far as to say that it is a supporting dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an incidental dynamic, but
Yeah. So yeah, we've got that solidly and excellent there for the core dynamic. So the last section is feedback. Let's see what their feedback was. Let's see, what have they got?
Again, more dramatic shuffling of papers in the background. There we go.
So, 1 point, they say, well, this actually isn't feedback. This is just them saying they plan to do something. Okay, right. So, feedback they got was that they should make sure that the game isn't like overly punishing to new players. Which might potentially be why there's so much explanatory text.
Okay, well, hang on. That might be why, but is that why? Have they explained how they're doing that?
So what they've said is that. Oh, actually, they haven't actually responded to the. Oh no, they. Okay, so that's why later on they say about this. So yeah, one of the things they did was. Implement the quick restart button so that you don't have to make it easier to retry if you are struggling, and also the option to skip the current level was added to try and make it so, if you get stuck you can still move on and try the rest of the game.
Okay, so I would say they are both good bits of polish, but they don't necessarily affect the primary loop of play.
Yeah, like it does make it potentially less frustrating if you can just skip a level you're having difficulty with, but it doesn't really address the fact that the level is already just too difficult.
Yeah. So, definitely a good thing to include, particularly for a portfolio piece or a piece of coursework that's being marked and we want to see all of the levels. But it doesn't necessarily address the design of the game itself.
So the other piece of feedback they got was that they needed to have some kind of choice or player agency, and potentially to have different paths on the level with different risks versus speeds.
Now there we go.
And so what they've said is that for these final two levels, for the last level, they made sure that there were two very distinct paths that were balanced in difficulty, and the player is rewarded for choosing the riskier path because it's faster.
Hang on, so are they balanced in difficulty, or are they...
I think what they mean here is that they've balanced... they said they've balanced it in terms of speed and difficulty, so I think they mean they've balanced it so that faster is...
Harder, okay, fair enough.
Harder.
Okay, in which case...
Because they say the player is rewarded for choosing the riskier path, so...
in which case, yeah, that's more of the sort of actual... what are we looking for? Something that has had a more of an impact on the actual design of their game. So that is a reasonable bit of feedback to have taken on board and to have worked on. Obviously, we did say, at a glance, it's not super obvious which one is the easiest path.
It's also it's hard to tell how successful it's been because we have not been able to finish this level yet. So it's not clear exactly how well balanced those have been. So I think if we start at satisfactory, we've got feedback was addressed and the changes have been somewhat successful.
I think we're easily there.
Yeah.
So have they made it to a good?
A good would be feedback has been addressed and the changes have been successful. And I think because of the issues we said before with the not really addressing the issue of it being potentially too hard for new players and it not being clear that the kind of risk reward element is here and actually balanced in this level, I don't think they've managed to do it.
I would argue maybe they have, in the sense that it hasn't fully addressed what they set out to do, but the very fact that there is a choice of routes means, at least although I've been stuck on this level, I've been able to go, okay, I'll try it this way this time, or the other way.
Yeah, I guess I think maybe halfway between them, because this side of things is definitely, the choice side of things has definitely been more effectively addressed than the difficulty. Okay, so that's halfway between a satisfactory and a good.
No. So close.
So close.
Okay. I have a feeling I'm going to be coming back to this one to just beat this level, which is, a good sign. All right, let's move on to the next one. And actually, that's our last game for this batch. So we will see you next time for another video. Bye bye.